Just to finish Senator Blumenthal's point, I hope you realize how ridiculous the four of you look. Spouting these preposterous, canned answers in a forum in which A, you're supposed to tell the truth, and B, you're supposed to demonstrate the judicial capacity to make independent, factual decisions in hard cases. If you can't even sit here and say that Joe Biden won that election or that the Capitol was attacked, what's left? What's left if a hard case comes your way as a judge, and let's say the Trump administration is bearing down on that? Why would we ever believe that you would give the litigants a fair hearing and a fair decision if the executive branch was leaning in on you when we can't get a reasonable answer out of any of you with the executive branch leaning in on you to give these ridiculous answers today? I'm really sorry to have to go through this and that you have to go through this. But it would be nice if you could tell your executive branch handlers, for instance, Ms. Clark, I'm supported by Lindsey Graham. He's a friend of President Trump. He's the second senior person on the Republican side in the Judiciary Committee. He's likely to be the next Judiciary Committee chair. I think I'll be okay. I don't need to make myself ridiculous at your direction. It'd be great if you could have said that. It would be great if your answers were simple and honest here today. It's really disappointing.
4 people who want to be federal judges just sat in front of the United States Senate and refused to confirm 2 of the most documented facts in recent American history: that Joe Biden won the 2020 presidential election, and that the United States Capitol was attacked on January 6, 2021. Not opinions, not contested legal questions, documented facts, certified by every state, confirmed by every court that heard a challenge, recorded on video watched by hundreds of millions of people around the world. And 4 nominees to lifetime federal judicial appointments, people who are asking the United States Senate to give them the power to make independent, factual decisions in hard cases for the rest of their careers, could not say yes to either one. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse said what every person watching that hearing was thinking: "You look ridiculous." And then he asked the question that cuts through everything else. If you cannot give a reasonable answer to a straightforward, factual question when the executive branch is leaning in on you today, in a confirmation hearing where the stakes are your entire career, why would anyone believe you? Would give a fair decision in a hard case when the executive branch leans in on you from the bench? That question has no good answer, because the behavior on display in that hearing room already answered it. These nominees are not protecting classified information. They are not navigating a genuine legal gray area. They are refusing to state documented facts because the president who nominated them has spent years insisting those facts are not true. And they have calculated correctly, apparently, that contradicting him even once in a public setting is more dangerous to their confirmation than making themselves look ridiculous in front of the entire country. That calculation is the death of judicial independence. Not theoretically, not eventually. Right now, in that hearing room, on camera, under oath.
Let me ask a different question, a legal question. A judge, you want to be judges. A judge gets a threat to the judge's life or to the judge's family. Can you imagine a scenario in which liability may attach to individuals beyond the utterer of that threat? Ms. Clark?
Senator, as a prosecutor, there are instances where there's some responsibility that is assigned to someone who is not the utterer of a threat to an individual. And so, to answer your question, yes, I can imagine.
Do you agree?
Yes, Senator, and if confirmed to the bench, I would follow all Supreme Court precedent and Ninth Circuit
You
precedent.
agree, Mr. Rick, you agree?
Yes, Senator, I would agree with that.
I don't know that I care what you think, Ms. Westerkamp, because you're going to international trade and you're probably not going to see much of this, but do you agree?
Yes, Senator.
Yeah, and those doctrines that would provide the legal basis for investigation in those scenarios would include doctrines like, name one, Ms. Clark.
Senator, doctrines that are, if someone is essentially carrying out,
Solicitation, would that be
Yes.
one? Solicitation of a
Yes.
threat?
yes,
Or a conspiracy out of which the threat emerged, would that be another one?
yes,
Yes. How about, and it's the product of an enterprise under the racketeering statutes. Would that also be another way that liability could extend beyond the utterer?
that is correct, Senator.
Can you think of any others, Ms. Lane, where liability extends beyond the utterer of the threat? What are some of the legal theories that would support that kind of investigation and prosecution?
Senator, the doctrines you mentioned, I would agree with, and I would just look always to the federal law and federal statutes guiding that.
Mr. Recchi?
Senator, I would agree with that. I think you covered the major ones, conspiracy, RICO. There may be other avenues of potential legal liability, but I think you covered the three big ones in that scenario.
Ms. Westerkamp, you agree?
Senator, I'm not aware if there are any more with my practice before the Court of International Trade and Court of Federal Claims that doesn't touch on criminal law.
So here's why I asked you these questions. I asked you these questions because right now federal judges are under the worst shadow of physical threat in my lifetime and perhaps in the history of this country.
That exchange was not random. Whitehouse is a former United States attorney. He knows exactly how to build a legal record. And what he just built, using the nominees' own confirmed answers, is the legal framework for investigating whoever is behind the threats being made against federal judges across this country. Let me explain why that matters and why Whitehouse spent time on it in this specific hearing. Right now, federal judges in the United States are facing the worst shadow of physical threat in living memory: death threats, threats against their families. An environment so dangerous that the United States Marshals Service, the agency responsible for protecting federal judges, has become a critical line of defense. The Marshals Service reports to the Department of Justice, Pam Bondi's Department of Justice, the same department that hired a man caught on video yelling "kill him" at police officers, the same department that gutted the public integrity section from 35 people to 2, the same department that tracks congresswomen's search histories and compiles opposition research binders for hearings. Whitehouse has asked the Marshals Service over a dozen times one simple question: if the evidence justifies it, will you investigate beyond the person who actually made the threat? Will you follow the evidence to whoever is behind it, the conspiracy, the enterprise, the network that produced the threat? The answer every single time has been silence. They will not answer. They will not commit. They will not confirm that they will do the most basic investigative work that every one of these nominees just agreed, under oath, is legally supported.
I have now over a dozen times asked the Marshals Service, will you investigate behind the utterer of a threat if the evidence justifies it? That's a super easy question. The answer is, yeah, of course we will. They won't answer that. They won't answer that. And I point this out because judges across the country need to pay attention to the fact that the Marshals Service won't confirm that it will investigate behind the utterer of a threat if the evidence supports that. And why would that be the case? That would be the case because when you get behind the utterer of a lot of these threats, you run into right-wing conspiracies. And this MAGA Department of Justice would rather not go there. And so they leave judges exposed with investigations in which they aren't doing investigative 101 work that you've all identified as plausible legal theories. And we need to fix that.
Whitehouse just told us exactly why the Marshals Service will not answer. When you follow the evidence behind the people making threats against federal judges, when you do the basic investigative work that solicitation law, conspiracy law, and the racketeering statutes all support, you run into right-wing networks. You run into MAGA-connected organizations and individuals. You run into the same ecosystem that produced January 6th, and that these nominees just refused to confirm was an attack on the Capitol. And the Department of Justice under this administration would rather leave judges exposed than follow that evidence to where it leads. Think about what that means in practice. A federal judge receives a credible death threat. The Marshal Service is supposed to protect that judge. But the Marshal Service will not commit to investigating who is behind the threat, who organized it, who funded it, who directed it, because that investigation might lead somewhere politically inconvenient for the administration that controls the Department of Justice. So the judge sits with a threat and partial protection. The network behind the threat operates without consequences, and the message sent to every person considering threatening a federal judge is clear. If your threat is connected to the right political networks, the investigation stops at you. That is not law enforcement. That is selective protection based on political alignment. And it is happening right now to the judges who are supposed to provide an independent check on executive power. Here is the full picture this hearing produced. 4 judicial nominees who cannot confirm documented facts under oath because the president who nominated them disputes those facts. A legal framework confirmed by those same nominees that supports investigating the networks behind threats to judges. A Marshal Service that has refused over a dozen times to commit to doing that investigation. And a Department of Justice the White House says would rather leave judges exposed than follow the evidence into right-wing conspiracies. Judicial independence is not just about what happens in a courtroom. It starts here, in a confirmation hearing, when a nominee decides whether telling the truth about a documented fact is worth the political risk. These 4 nominees made their decision, and Senator Whitehouse made sure the entire country saw it.